can't hear nothing. When I was hitting it, I was hitting it.
More than 60 years after forming one of the most influential rock bands in history, the Rolling Stones continue to prove that age has never slowed them down. With the release of their 25th studio album, Foreign Tongues, the legendary British group remains a powerful force in the music industry. While millions of fans celebrate another chapter in the band's remarkable career, one former recording engineer still remembers a time when no record company believed in them. Alan Florence, now 83 years old, witnessed the band's earliest days, long before packed stadiums, platinum albums, and global fame became part of their story. Back in 1963, Florence worked as a recording engineer at IBC Studios in London, one of Britain's respected independent recording facilities during the 1960s and 1970s. At the time, he had no idea he would become part of a small but fascinating chapter in rock history.
Florence was only in his early 20s when he joined the studio. During quiet periods, studio management occasionally allowed engineers to invite promising local musicians to use the recording rooms. It was a simple arrangement that gave young artists an opportunity to create professional demo recordings without major financial backing. One day, fellow engineer Glyn Johns approached Florence with an unusual request. Johns wanted to bring in a new rhythm and blues band called the Rolling Stones. The name sounded unfamiliar and even slightly amusing to Florence, who had never heard of the group before. An evening recording session was arranged, and the musicians arrived carrying little more than their instruments and big ambitions. Among them was founding member Brian Jones, whose creative vision had helped establish the band's identity. Joining him were Mick Jagger, Keith Richards, Bill Wyman, Charlie Watts, and longtime musical collaborator Ian Stewart, forming the lineup that would later become one of rock music's most celebrated groups. Inside the studio, the young musicians recorded 4 rhythm and blues cover songs. Their performances captured the raw energy and musical chemistry that would later define their sound. Once the session was complete, acetate discs were produced from the recordings so they could be presented to record companies across Britain. Everyone involved believed the demos had real potential. The performances sounded confident, energetic, and authentic. Florence expected music executives to recognize the band's talent almost immediately. That never happened. The acetates were sent to several major industry figures, yet every response came back the same. No label wanted to sign the band. The rejection surprised everyone connected with the project. Florence remembered feeling disappointed because he believed the musicians had delivered something special. Despite the quality of the recordings, the industry simply failed to recognize what stood before them. Rather than giving up, the band returned to IBC Studios not long afterward for another recording session. Once again, they recorded 4 additional rhythm and blues covers, expanding their demo collection to a total of 8 songs. Florence worked closely with the musicians during both sessions and developed a positive impression of them. Contrary to the rebellious image that would later become associated with the Rolling Stones, he remembered them as respectful, polite, and well-mannered young men. They behaved professionally inside the studio, focused on the music rather than creating trouble. He recalled that they looked more like educated college students than unruly rock stars. Their attitude impressed the recording staff just as much as their musical ability. The expanded collection of 8 demo recordings was again circulated within the music business. Once more, the response remained disappointing. Record companies continued to overlook the group, failing to recognize that they were passing on what would eventually become one of the greatest bands in history. For Florence and his colleagues, the repeated rejection became increasingly frustrating. They genuinely believed the musicians deserved a chance, yet every attempt to attract industry attention ended unsuccessfully. Months later, an unexpected opportunity completely changed the band's future. Florence received instructions to deliver the demo tape to his manager so the studio could recover the costs of the recording sessions. What seemed like an ordinary administrative task soon became a turning point in rock history. At the studio, Florence found his manager speaking with a young entrepreneur named Andrew Loog Oldham. Unlike many record executives who had already dismissed the band, Oldham immediately recognized their potential. After listening to the recordings, Oldham decided to purchase the demo tape for £98. Although the amount appears modest by modern standards, Florence remembered that it represented a significant investment during the early 1960s. That decision proved invaluable. Oldham soon became the Rolling Stones' manager and producer, helping transform the unknown London rhythm and blues band into one of the biggest names in popular music. Under his guidance, the group developed its image, refined its sound, and secured a recording contract with Decca Records later in 1963. From that point forward, the band's rise happened quickly. Hit singles followed, international tours expanded their audience, and their reputation continued to grow throughout the decade. The musicians who had once struggled to attract even a single interested record label soon became global superstars. Florence's own career also continued successfully. After leaving IBC Studios, he joined another recording company and worked alongside many respected artists throughout the years. Even so, he often reflects on those early Rolling Stones sessions as one of the most memorable experiences of his professional life. Looking back today, he cannot remember exactly which rhythm and blues songs the band recorded during those demo sessions. The titles have faded from memory over the decades, but the atmosphere inside the studio remains vivid. He remembers a group of talented young musicians determined to succeed despite repeated rejection. He remembers believing they possessed extraordinary potential when few others shared that opinion. Most importantly, he remembers witnessing the very beginning of a journey that would reshape rock music forever. History often celebrates breakthrough albums, sold-out concerts, and chart-topping singles. Yet every legendary career begins somewhere much smaller. For the Rolling Stones, that beginning included modest recording sessions, rejected demo tapes, and a handful of people who believed in them before the rest of the world caught on. More than 6 decades later, those early disappointments seem almost impossible to imagine. The Rolling Stones have sold hundreds of millions of records, performed for audiences across every continent, and influenced generations of musicians. Their latest album, Foreign Tongues, demonstrates that the band's creative drive remains alive, even after an extraordinary career spanning more than 60 years. Florence still follows their success with admiration. Watching the musicians continue recording and performing well into their 80s leaves him impressed by their remarkable longevity. Few artists remain active for so long, and even fewer continue producing new music while maintaining worldwide popularity. For Florence, the memories extend far beyond the headlines and record sales. They remind him of a time when 6 ambitious young musicians walked into a London recording studio with nothing but talent, determination, and dreams that nobody else seemed willing to support. Those overlooked demo sessions eventually became the first steps toward one of the greatest success stories in the history of rock and roll.